My wife, Kathy, was the first to tell me about it, and I'm going to tell it to you also, but I'm warning you, it's addicting. Kathy told me about a new YouTube channel called SB Mowing. SB Mowing is a landscape company owned by Spencer. And what Spencer will do is drive around town to find the most neglected, uncut, unruly, weeded landscapes in the city. And then he knocks on the door and volunteers to do a complete overhaul, manicure of the lawn. And then he videos the work in time-lapse speed. It's absolutely mesmerizing. He first weed whacks, and then he trims, and then he edges, and then he sets the lawnmower on the highest setting because the grass is so high. And then he goes over it again and again, lowering the setting, making that coveted checkerboard mark on your lawn. He begins with a jungle, and by the end of the day, it looks like a lawn manicured for a palace. But that's not the best part. The best part is that not only does Spencer just give his labor, he volunteers all of it because he simply loves what he does. But the best part is when the homeowner drives home, or when the homeowner opens up their door for the first time to see this paradise, and Spencer catches that too on video. I'm telling you, you got to watch this, but I warned you. And to think that I binged SBC Mowing on the very week we are looking at Bible stories we ought to know, and of course we begin with creation. And what we heard from our text this morning, you see, from Genesis, is that it's not Spencer from SB Mowing, but it's Moses who videographed the story, so to speak, that we can now watch. We get to watch all the work, and it is crazy good. And then we get to see the best part, when the owners show up and arrive and survey this new paradise. But we get ahead of ourselves. We first need to remember that Moses wrote this story not to us, 21st century inhabitants of planet Earth, but the book was first written to Israelites. And the situation was that most scholars believe that the book of Genesis was written when Israel was in exile in Babylon. Now, why is that important? Because in Babylon, they're doing forced labor for their captives. They're hearing all the other religious stories of their captives and their captors. And they decide that this is the point now where we must memorialize our story, the ancient stories. All the stories we have heard with our ear, we now have a system to codify it and to write it all down, and they did. And here's the important part. They wrote them down so that we would have that story all the way to today, to preserve them, yes. But they also wrote it down, you see, to remind them how the creation story was different than the Babylonian creation story, and any other creation stories, for that matter, that they heard around them. Here's what they heard from their Babylonian captives. Once upon a time, there were gods of heaven and earth, and they became angry and combative. Finally, Marduk, the god of thunder, brought peace when he killed Tiamat, the goddess of the oceans. Marduk killed her by shooting a flaming arrow down her throat. And after that display of power from Marduk, all the other gods stopped fighting him, and Marduk became king. But then King Marduk put all those defeated gods, his enemies, to work for him. And he made him clean up all the destruction in the wake of all of his battles. They had to build canals and make bricks, replant fields and gather food. These servant gods complained about this work, having to work for Marduk, because they wanted to live a life of leisure like King Marduk. Marduk got tired of all their complaining, so he took one of the complainers, Kingu, and he killed him. Then he collected Kingu, the complainer's blood, mixed it with clay from a riverbed, and he created you and me. That's you. That's how we got here, according to the Babylonians. You were made to do the work that the gods complained they had to do, but no longer wanted to do. That's what Israel heard about the origins of you and me. Now, what does that story of the Babylonians say about them and about us? Are our lives valuable? No. Are we loved? No. The story said you were created by a violent act of competition. You were created to be a little bit more than a slave. Life is cruel. Your life is meaningless. The universe doesn't care about you. And if any of that today, the message of the Babylonians, sounds familiar, it's because it is. What are you going to hear tomorrow? You are nothing but an accidental arrangement of atoms. You are an evolutionary hiccup. You are nothing but a computer made of meat. All you are is a bipedal, linguistically gifted animal. You are a product of cold evolutionary forces, and the universe could care less if you were here. It's not the Marduk Babylonian story per se, but it's the same explanation of life. So thankfully, on this, the Lord's Day, after a week of living with the stories of Marduk and the Babylonians, the exiled Jews could meet together in the middle of Babylon for worship, and we can meet here in the middle of Troy for worship to hear the story, the true story, a completely different story of who we are and our place in the universe. And this is the truth. In Genesis, we come out of being because of God's love. It wasn't random and chaotic and cold. The planet Earth just happened to be spinning here by default. No. The Bible makes it so clear. The world was intentionally created and ordered and perfect. God doesn't need to create any of this, but he did just for his glory. And instead of starting with a bloodthirsting, arrow-throwing God, Genesis instead gives us a picture of the God lovingly bending down, taking up dust into his hands and blowing on it with his breath until we came into existence with a soul. You see, love is foundational and at the center. And then God's love didn't stop with us on the sixth day of creation. Lamentations 3 will tell us as we go on to the Bible that love of God is renewed each new morning when God lovingly breathes on us all over again, where it says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. His mercies are new every morning. In the Marduk story, we were told that we were made to be slaves for God. But Genesis tells us, no, we were intentionally made to be glorifiers of God, to work with God in this creation, and our work matters. You heard it, be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth, God commands. That is to say, I want you to do more than just enjoy my world. I want you to maintain it and explore it and develop it. I want you to craft things. I want you to make bricks and with them build homes, and I want you to plow fields. I want you to develop software and peer through a telescope just to try to grasp how large and wondrous is the universe we find ourselves in. God says, I want you to climb these mountains and canoe these rivers. I want you to understand and discover properties of wood and stone so that you can carve and sculpt and cut and create beautiful things. And so, as Adam discovered our world, we came across some wondrous creations. Guppies and alligators, and pink flamingos and black crows and snakes and sloths. There are flying raptors on Earth today whose wingspans are larger than the car you drive. Hummingbirds weigh less than a sugar cube. Our lavish God filled our world with, literally in the Hebrew, swarming swarms of things. Insects and animals and buffalo and penguin and gorillas and king cobras and dachshunds. God spoke and created the Swiss Alps and the Caribbean islands and the Himalayas and the prairies of canvas and the rice paddies of China and the Galapagos Islands with their strange creatures there, the tortoise, the animal that has the longest lifespan of any. The great blue whale and blueberries and apple trees and the smell of gardenia and the amaryllis contained in a bulb. But to me, the most wondrous aspect of our text today from Genesis 2, it's not only that, but it's that moment of unveiling when the gardeners are shown their garden. Because it's then, did you notice God gave a really, really strange directive when you think about it? God parades all these wondrous creatures and creations in front of Adam, and he says, now I want you to name them. I mean, did stuff not already come with names? Couldn't God think up names? Of course God could. But think of it this way. By inviting Adam at that point to engage his help meant that it was an invitation for Adam to not just enjoy creation, but to play a role in God's creation. Adam wasn't just to be a spectator. He was to be a participant. So he has to go out and name it. Well, what do you have to do before you can name something? Don't you first have to find them, and then study them, and then watch it, and then understand it, and then watch them some more in their habitat to see all their complex behaviors and qualities? Where does it eat? What does it eat? When does it eat? How does it socialize? Where does it live? How does it make its home? What are its peculiar habits? You see, when God invites Adam to name things, he's also inviting him to do this joyful, curious exploration of his world, so he can be effective and directive and faithful in his role as a participant with God in the world. About a month ago, school started for my daughter Elizabeth, who teaches high school math. And Mrs. Nellison teaches her students there to see the unseen things of the universe in the world of numbers: pattern, sets, multiplication, division, irrational numbers, whole numbers, integers. And then for fun, she loves to show her students that when you take a circle's circumference but divide it by its diameter, you get an irrational number that will go on in infinity without ever repeating a decimal. And she'll say, it's called pi. And I call it naming the animals. At William Beaumont School of Medicine, just a few weeks ago, a first-year med student put on her white coat. Right now, she's studying biology as an undergrad, but now taking first a closer look at the red and white blood cells and how they work with each other and how they carry oxygen and how they work in the immune system and how they fight off disease. That med student is learning about disease with all sorts of still unexplained mysteries of the human body. That med student on the campus of Oakland University is being taught how to name the animals. The mother of an independent toddler right now is trying to figure out, how in the world do I get my toddler to sleep through the night? My first kids never gave me a problem, but this second one fights bedtime like I've asked him to walk through fire. She talks with other parents about strategies. She checks it out online. She reads books. Should I be speaking soothing words? Should I be severe? How long do I let him cry? Do I stay with him and hold his hand? Do I walk away? She is trying to discern how God crafted her individual child so she can help it grow and thrive and sleep. She's naming the animals. Tomorrow in New York at the Steinway Piano Factory, there will be a wood crafter there whose job is to survey all the wood that's available, because his job tomorrow is to make a new Steinway piano. He needs to find a piece of wood by studying the grain, by studying the type. It has to be strong enough to reverberate the tone right back into the room, but it also has to be flexible enough because it has to be bent into a peculiar shape. He uses all of his knowledge and experience to find just the right woods, and then he will assemble it all with wire and brass and tension. It will all be held together to create this perfect instrument. But he didn't make a Steinway. He named the animals. You get my point. High school math teachers, pre-meds, medical students, mothers, fathers, chemists in their labs, teachers in their classrooms, business people creating goods and services and spreadsheets, ministers learning the name of their congregants. We're all continuing the work, you see, of naming. We're continuing the mandate given to Adam of participating in the discoveries of this wondrous, perfect world that God made for us and invites us to enjoy. Do you see it? God created us in love and then makes us joyful partners in the development of the world he loves. Our Marduk world is filled with people still stuck in the mud who live and tell a story of fear and chaos and survival. They walk around feeling like they don't matter, their work doesn't matter, that they're meaningless because they're nothing more than a violent, random accident going nowhere. But we have good news for them. We can tell them that no, this is our Father's world. A Father beyond all power who created them in love and who breathed upon his dusty children with a loving, life-giving breath and breathes on them anew each morning. A God who does not leave them but fills their life with meaningful tasks, with the task of naming. And of course, we tell them more. We go on to say, and this God who created them in love and who is so committed to the world he made, he is so loving that when things went bad, he didn't give up on us. Quite the opposite. He came back into the world as a person named Jesus, and God, through Jesus, once again breathed all over the world in love and laid his one and only Son in a manger. Jesus took on our dusty flesh and showed the unshakable love he had for this earth and for the goodness of human life by then giving up his breath for us as he hung on a cross. So tomorrow, it'll be Monday. We'll all begin another week, as we say, another walk around the block. But I hope your tomorrow will be a little bit different. And this is how you're going to make it different. Tomorrow, when the alarm goes off and our beautiful eastern sky is filled with the sun and the weather forecast says it's going to be a clear sunrise, as that sun again runs its course and fills up our skyline, I want you to get up and you're going to say, God, thank you for such a beautiful world. Then I want you to say, and God has given me something that this beautiful world needs. So I've got to get to work today. I've got some good work to do. Maybe it is that I have a glorious story to tell. And then you say, and God, let's get busy together because I've got some naming of the animals to do. Amen.